Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Let's Talk Dispatch here on my channel, The Raspy Dispatcher. Very excited today to bring another guest with some great experience in the dispatch realm in regards all the way from Scotland. They created a company called Emergency Locate, and they are currently still involved in strategic operations management for ambulance services over there. This is Nick Sutton, everybody.
Hey
Hi,
Ashley,
Nick. How are you doing?
great, thank you. How about yourself?
I am okay. I'm doing good. I'm doing good. Thank you for joining me all the way from Scotland virtually. I'm super excited to make this connection with you.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's really, really good of you to have me, and I'm looking forward to your conversation and questions.
Awesome. So, just tell me a little bit about your journey in emergency services and how you got started and what all that looks like.
Okay, sure. So I joined the emergency services back in 2004 in Manchester, England, and started my journey as a call handler. So processing the incoming 999 calls as they are here in the UK. Um, I found that a really interesting role, as you'll all be able to relate to, dealing with the public and predominantly. Well, we worked in an ambulance control center, so it was all medical calls, um, and really enjoyed helping those people and providing what could have been and what was in certain instances life saving advice over the phone until the responders got there to take over. Um, so I did that for a few years and then progressed to dispatch and then training and into management after that. So all in all, it's around 18, 19 years altogether that I've worked for the emergency services here in the UK.
That's so awesome. So, you guys, like you said, it's 999 over there in the UK compared to our 911 dialing service. And for the medical side of things, are you guys using a system that is prompting your questions as well? Or like how does your systems work over there?
Sure. So there's two main systems for call triage in the UK. One of them is MPDS and the ProQA software, which I'm sure is familiar. I mean, it came from the States, so I'm sure
Mhm.
you're familiar with it. And the other one is software that's been developed by the government and the NHS, which is called Pathways, which takes a much more clinical approach to call triage. In fact, you need to be a clinician to actually be licensed to use that. So there's much more by the way of training and qualifications compared to ProQA. Excuse me. Having said that, ProQA is by far the most common software that's used over here in the UK still.
Awesome. I didn't even realize that there were programs out there in general that uh, in the dispatch world that require that level of training, which I think is valid and the more training the better, right?
Yeah, sure, but certainly in the UK, I guess it's the centres that there in the US, we are predominantly single service centres, so we
Mm,
don't do very much co-location at all. All of the incoming 999 calls are picked up by a firm called BT, British Telecom. So you speak to
mm,
an operator. The operator will ask you which service you require, and then you'll be passed to the relevant service for the area that you're within. And then a call handler will triage a call. Typically, call handling is separate to dispatch as well. So
mm,
you'll have two people that are looking at the same incident. One person on the line with the caller inputting the answers to the questions in the triage, and a dispatcher who's using the CAD system and the radio to share that information with the responders as well.
awesome. And are you guys dual trained or do you typically apply for one or the other and do that for that whole entire shift?
So certainly when I started, you'd start as a call handler or a telecommunicator and
Mhm,
sort of progress to dispatching because it was paid slightly more. And these days there are more direct pathways straight to dispatching without having to
mhm,
do the call handling side of things.
mhm.
But I'd say there's mixed results as to how well those direct entry dispatchers take to the job, because in my experience it's much better to have a couple of years of call handling under your belt to
Mhm.
understand what information the responders actually need before you start your dispatch journey.
I definitely agree. I think one thing that in my journey we did call taking first, and then we went on to radio training because we were dual trained in my center. And one thing I remember freaking out about radio, like being super nervous to talk on the radio and, have people hear me, have my officers hear me. But what I found is that the difference between my first day on radio and my first day call taking was so drastically different because I had already been exposed to so much, high priority things on the call taking side that when they came in and I had to dispatch them, or when they were on viewed because I worked police, and I had to just go with it, my level of anxiety was lower because it's the same. It's like riding a bike, just in a different direction, type of thing.
Sure, yeah. Those responders are more used to dealing with the information that you're giving them, rather than having to deal with the public who might be their first interaction with the emergency services.
Hmm. And I would say over the years, I've been doing this for about 5 years now. That technology has certainly advanced even in that small period of time. And one of the biggest hurdles in dispatching, and one of the biggest myths, I would say, when I'm talking to callers, is that we know exactly where you are. We can map your precise location down to the, uh, inches. And that's just not true, right? Um, and I think that is one of the main reasons you probably got into creating Emergency Locate. So just tell us a little bit about that in your journey into this company.
So you're exactly right, Ashley. Um, the the misconception is there, I think, with the public, and in some degree within EMS, 999 or 911. So you actually can do that. Um, it's just that we can't do that, or we can't do it very well, because
Mm-hmm.
of the rate at which technology becomes available to the emergency services. Because we can't just go out and buy a piece of software. Yeah, software. It's
Yeah.
not like it's not like Microsoft Word or Excel, and we just sit
Mm-hmm.
down and learn it and use it. It's got to work alongside CAD. We've got to consider how dispatchers will view it on the screens with radio systems, and work alongside their existing processes. So it's not so much a case that the tech that you can't do that. It's just that it's not easily available or accessible to the people that need it, those dispatchers and telecommunicators. So during my journey, when I was call taking and dispatching, I was certainly frustrated. And bearing, this is 15 years ago, that
Mm-hmm.
that the technology wasn't there, and in those days it probably wasn't. Whereas now it definitely is,
Mm-hmm.
because you can see where your Uber is. Your Uber can find you. You can see what stage of your journey your Domino's pizza is in the oven before it comes to you. But it's
True.
really difficult to find somebody that desperately needs emergency assistance. So there's been a
Mm-hmm.
couple of developments in the past few years that have been really interesting for the emergency services sector. So things like Rapid SOS, the recent announcement over there by AT&T to start providing location information over 911, apologies. So we've actually had that for quite some time now.
Mm-hmm.
Here in the UK, if you ring the emergency services on 999 and you've got a compatible phone, so a relatively recent iPhone or Android, the phone will check your GPS location and send a silent text message that you never see. It doesn't cost you anything. You don't have to do anything with it. Sends the text message to the emergency services. It contains your location, and bang, we see it up on right in front of CAD. But when it works exceptionally well. So
Mm-hmm.
normally I can tell which side of the street somebody is calling from with this
Wow.
with this ability, and it's great. Probably 90% of the time it's really good. But like I say, you've got to have a relatively new phone. How you've used your phone in the seconds and minutes before you make an emergency call really makes a difference to the accuracy that's provided. Because if you have a burner phone that you turn off and you go for a hike, have an accident, turn it on, make an emergency call, the GPS chip and the tech inside your phone isn't quick enough yet to be able to pinpoint your location accurately enough. So what gets
Mm-hmm.
sent isn't, or sometimes cannot be that helpful. sometimes it's only as good as like cell tower triangulation, which could be, a couple of miles, which, as we
Yeah.
all know, that doesn't really help anyone. So back in the day, I was dealing with incoming calls and experiencing this frustration. And as a manager in the service now, I'm dealing with adverse incidents and reports and negative media inquiries around why
Mm,
we still not been able to find a certain, every now and again, why we still not been able to get the help that we need to get to the people that need it. So
mm,
purely out of frustration, I thought, there must be a way that we can take this technology and put it together in a way that is accessible to dispatchers, doesn't upset control room infrastructure. People don't need to install anything, don't need an app, and crucially, the requirement of the person making the emergency call is absolutely minimal.
mm,
So what we really wanted to do was create a process whereby all you need to do is maybe push a link in a text message and the dispatcher can see where you are. Or even some, where we'd really like to go to is even less than that, but we're limited by the constraints in the phone. So things like privacy and the security around location information. It's absolutely right that stuff exists and it's there, but actually when it's an emergency, it can actually hinder you. So we see one of the biggest obstacles to us successfully returning a caller's location could be things like location permissions in your browser, which
mm.
people will routinely disable because they're entitled to digital privacy and security. But as I say, when you need to share that information in an emergency, it can be difficult, and we have to find ways to undo that, which we
Mm.
have done. So that was felt like it was quite a lengthy answer there.
No, I mean it had a lot of great info. I mean, um, the I don't think I've experienced a silent text message. So I thought that's really interesting tech. I know. Do you guys have text to 911 over there as well, or 999? I guess it would be that kind of service.
So we don't actually.
Okay.
No, we don't. Emergency locate does enable that. So if you're
Okay.
a customer, then you can send out a text message and begin a two-way conversation between the dispatcher and the caller. But it's not. There's never been anything that's really took off here in the UK, if I'm honest.
Yeah, that's kind of like a newer thing for us. So when you said that it's into the silent text, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool because we can initiate a text to 911 with someone. And there are services like you mentioned, Emergency Locate has that within the system, trying to pinpoint that location, you can initiate that text. But the fact that the phone carrier is kind of sending that silent notification, almost like an alarm company calling in an activation before.
That's
Um,
right.
that's awesome tech. And I'm like, when are we going to get it? So that'll be super interesting when that finally does come over here. Um, what other services does Emergency Locate offer within the program? Kind of how does it work? What?
Okay. So we wanted to focus very much on location, and we see some other providers and other people in our sphere really hooking into emergency services, and hey, we can do location. Sorry, we can do we can translate languages, or we can give you video. And
Mm,
these days, that's not actually that difficult to provide. If somebody's
mm,
holding a mobile phone and you're in front of a computer, it's not difficult to get the two to talk to each other and send whatever information you need. Um, but I believe that it's better to do one thing really well than a
mm.
lot of things just averagely. Because when we look at something like CAD, CAD does huge amount of things, and
Yeah.
there's definitely some CADs that are better than others, but they do a lot, and most of them do it, well enough for us to do our jobs. But
Mm.
no one's like, this is an amazing CAD. It does everything perfectly, because
Yeah.
because that sort of thing doesn't exist. So when I created Emergency Locate, I wanted to focus on location and make sure that it was doing exactly what we said it would do, work
Mm,
in really difficult circumstances. So things like, your caller might not have mobile internet. or they might not
Mm,
be able to speak at all because they're in an active shooter scenario, or they're medically compromised and you can't hear what they're saying clearly. So we wanted to create a solution that's sort of all encompassing, as in can deal with anything that you throw at it, but just looks at location. So the functionality within Emergency Locate itself, there's three key parts. The first is locating somebody via their smart device. The second would be converting known location information. So somebody might call into 911 and give you coordinates or what three words. We provide a way that converts that information into any other format you need, but crucially also gives you a what we call a dispatchable address. So for this is important to be able to firstly create the entry in CAD, and secondly deploy the responders to the right location as well. So let's take the example of a what three words address. If you're given table, chair, spoon, and I've no idea what that is. That's just one I made up, and you put it into Emergency Locate, we'll give you all the other coordinate systems that that result from that address, but also a dispatchable address, which might say something like that resolves to 200 meters north of one main street in whichever town. So you get a full address
mm,
and a distance and a direction from that address that the responder needs to go to. So if you walk that through as a responder, typically we're responding in vehicles, so we're using the road network. So
mm,
we go to a physical address, and if we needed, 2 fields and through a forest away over there somewhere,
mm,
then we need to provide the responder with, at very least, a distance and a direction in which to go from from the physical address. So we're giving them information that they can look around and see it, an address, and then know which way to go and how far to go as well. But we
mm,
also enhance that with a third part of our functionality, which is called SAR deploy. And this is a way of generating a very concise web link that contains location information in it. Super easy to share with responders. You can integrate it into CAD, automate it. There's a QR code. You can share it however you like.
mm,
But all it does is opens a dashboard on the responder's phone. They choose the app to navigate they want to navigate with. So Google Maps, what three words. Over here in the UK, we're linked in with some digital mapping providers. So we have Ordnance Survey level mapping, which is really detailed. It shows every single path and fence and that sort of thing.
mm,
And gives them the ability to navigate once they're out of their vehicle. Because if you're
mm,
using Emergency Locate, it's probably a difficult location. It's not going to be a house or a building.
mm,
It's going to be somewhere obscure. So we use those three parts of the system together to locate where we need to go, convert the location information to something that's suitable and helpful to dispatch and responders, and then enhance the capability of the responder to be able to get to exactly where it is that they needed. And the bit that I really like about what Emergency Locate has become is we can do that entire process from locating somebody that doesn't know where they are or can't clearly communicate where they are, going through to CAD and out again the other side to a responder, and having that responder arrive where they were needed without anybody ever verbally communicating any location information. So there's no
mm,
risk of a what three words address being misheard or misspelled, or a
mm,
coordinate being typed incorrectly, or somebody getting the wrong address, or the responder not hearing the information correctly and going to somewhere other than where they should have been. Um,
mm,
the process is seamless in that from location to arrival, there's
mhm.
there's no chance of a mistake being brought into that chain, which is really powerful because you do not want a mistake to be brought into something as critical as an emergency situation, whether it's finding the person or getting somebody to that person to give them the assistance that they need.
This is awesome. And, one thing I think that resonates is definitely, doing one thing really, really well. Because in the world of dispatch, we're constantly like octopusing it up, right? We're like doing all these things, trying to do all these things accurately, as quick as possible, in order to ensure that we get help to where it needs to go, the right resources, ABC. And one of the most important things, or one of the most frequent things that I hear from callers is like, is someone coming? Are they on their way? How long
Hmm.
until they get here? So just reiterating the point, that location, having that location and is most important to the caller and most important to the responders and the dispatchers, right? So it totally like makes sense that your company emergency locate is really focusing on doing that really really well. um, and not only that, but being able to do that really really well increases our response time. And I think more importantly, and I just kind of realized this with another conversation that I had with another dispatcher yesterday, um, is that it decreases our trauma, right? So I if I couldn't get there because of a lack of technology or a lack of, I thought it was this way when it was that way. And then as a dispatcher, as a first responder, I was right there but didn't get there in time. And it becomes a bad outcome that could have been
Hmm.
changed by having a better location. My trauma goes up. But if we have the technology like emergency locate to get there accurately, quickly as possible in these extreme situations, then that reduces our trauma as well, which I think is an important part of having
Absolutely,
these systems.
absolutely. Yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, actually, and it's probably the part of working in emergency services that's least well talked about. So our our hashtag, if you like, on Twitter was actually to expand the toolbox, because what I believe is that there's no one right tool for something like emergency locate. So, if this was a sales pitch, I would absolutely say to you, go and look at Rapid SOS. Go and look at what your telco providers are doing to give you location information, because most of the time it works really, really well. When it
Mhm.
doesn't work, you need to look at something like emergency locate for a bunch of different reasons. So it's about having access to a range of tools, and for the dispatcher to be able to pick up the right tool for the job. And like you say, once those tools are used effectively and they're used in the right place, then it does reduce the trauma for those individuals, the trauma for the responders that would be frustrated if they didn't get to the right place. Um, the whole communication between the responders and dispatch, because if the responder arrived at the wrong place because they were given the wrong information, then that doesn't do relations between dispatchers and responders any
Mhm.
favors. Then you've things like negative media, and of course the outcome for the people that are waiting for emergency assistance. And you can link all that back to things like recruitment and retention, because if
Mhm.
we don't give our staff the right tools to do the job that we're asking them to do, how can we be surprised when they burn out, or they experience trauma through the job? So, like I say, it's really interesting to hear you at the start of the call say that in your in your part of the world that we can't do this, because we definitely can. The tools are there, and they've been
Mhm.
created. It's
Yeah.
just about making them available now. And it's a really exciting time to be in 911, because there's some really big players like, say, Rapid SOS, What Three
Mhm.
Words, that are that are providing solutions, but nobody, not even emergency locate, as can provide a tool that does everything brilliantly. It's definitely
Mhm.
about having access to a range of tools and choosing the right tool for the situation that you're in.
Mhm. Totally. And I remember when I first started, there was no rapid SOS or rapid deploy in my centers. Um, and then that was kind of like the first thing we started getting that. So before they came into our centers, the conversation that I would have with, callers is like, I don't know where you are. Like we have that Annie Alley that comes through. It gives me meters. This is kind of where I'm seeing you, but I need you to be more specific. I need landmarks. I need an actual physical address if you have one. Our tech does not work like the movies, you know? And then rapid deploys, rapid SOS started happening, and those started coming into the centers. And it was like, oh, this is more accurate. I feel more confident in providing this to my responders with telling them like we have no voice contact, but this is what we were provided through these systems. So we
Mhm.
feel a little better about that, right? Um, and then when you take it a step further and we're trying to make the systems even better, and we're talking about emergency locate, this third kind of prong that you guys have this ability to give that information directly to the first responder when they step out of their vehicle. You know, I had situations where we're mapping on this huge meters, and my units are just like lost. They're out of their cars. They're not looking at their MDTs. You know, the geography's all wonky. So we would have to like use our phones, send a screenshot, send an email to them so they could just have a visual. So the
Wow.
fact that you have created this like in the app, send the link, we could pull it up on our phone just the way we're walking using Google Maps to a GPS. I think that's a really exciting tool that you've made available through Emergency Locate.
No, thanks very much for kind words. And I think that the rationale really about to create those tools is about keeping it as simple as possible for
Mhm.
both for the emergency caller, because if you can't find somebody, it's not the best time to be asking them to download an app or just do whatever it is to
Yeah.
go and put a sign outside the house so that the responders can find you, because
Mhm.
you know some people will do that, sure. More people would download an app like what 3 words, but you're never going to get 100%. And as
Mhm.
a provider of emergency assistance or care, that really I feel that, and I feel comfortable saying this because I work within the sector, that really we need to own this problem and stop trying to have the public solve it for us. I think
Mhm.
we've got the responsibility to locate and respond to people that are asking us for help, and not get ourselves in a position where I can't help you because you didn't download an app, or you don't have lighting outside your house, or I can't see the
Mhm.
street sign on your road. That's not their fault either. And bear
Mhm.
in mind, this is somebody that might be having the worst day of their life, and they've asked us for help. So we need to make sure that we and our staff are equipped to help them. And the biggest part of that is identifying where they are and where they need the help.
Exactly. And I think that one of the bigger things is like we're not talking to rational people, when they call us at work. They're not having a good day. They're stressed out. They're possibly a victim, possibly going through a medical emergency. So expecting rational responses or rational communication um, is out of the question. Like we shouldn't expect someone who maybe was just assaulted or a physical altercation or can't breathe, like, hey, can you go unlock your door, like things like that. We need to have answers and tools to help them, because those responses are going to be delayed, they're going to be inaccurate, and not because that person doesn't want to help, it's because they're in that state of panic,
Uh,
essentially.
They've got other things to deal with
Yeah.
other than I'm sure you hear it as much as we do. Stop asking me so many questions. Well, actually, the
Yeah,
questions are really important, but
they are.
not as important as finding where you are. So we need
Mhm.
to make that part as easy as possible. Um, and like I say, the tools are available. We just need to, all of us, be better at making sure the people that need those tools have got them when they need them.
And so did you have any like previous software experience before like diving into this, or did you just like find the need and like I'm just gonna, you know, I call it YouTube college and figure out how to create this technology?
So there was a little bit of luck on my part. I did have some experience around web framework development.
Mm.
So that basically I had enough education in that area to develop a prototype, and then I outsourced the work to professional that knows what they're doing to pull together what we have now. And that, again, that's really important around making sure that when you provide these solutions, you provide a system that does what you say it will do, that is available to the people that need it when they need it. So things like resilience of our infrastructure, we outsource that to people that are specialists in infrastructure resilience. For our code development, we outsource that to a code development team as well, and make sure that it's tested, etc., etc. I do a heap of work with with emergency locate and how to provide the training to 911 centers, so that we can make sure for those people that choose to bring it into their agencies, that it's as easy as it possibly can be for a dispatcher to log in, do what they need to do, and retrieve a location. Because we accept that it might not be every day that that the staff use emergency locate, especially for those smaller centers, and especially for those centers that have got access to things like rapid SOS, rapid deploy, or telco location information. So because it's not used every day, it needs to be something that's as simple as possible. And not forgetting that, the dispatchers, call handlers, telecommunicators are also working in a pressurized environment and dealing with a lot of difficult demands. So, we should make it as easy as possible, because you guys are doing a really tough job as well.
Totally. And one thing that I think is super relevant and that I try to express to folks who are trying to get into this field or thinking about getting into this field is that we all bring our own stuff and our own experience, right? So I think listening to your story and hearing about your company, it's kind of one of those situations where two things can exist at the same time, and the fact that they do exist at the same time have created something amazing, right? Your full-time career is in ambulance services. You found a love for this, but you also have a background in the web development, and so you bring that into dispatch as well, and then those two worlds collide and you have emergency locate. And I think that's we should acknowledge those things in the world of dispatch, because like you said, we are responsible for creating a better 911 or 999 system as the folks who are sitting in it.
Yeah, I suppose it's made me really observant around the dispatchers and the call handlers that I see at at real work, where I see them doing their job, and they might come away from a call or step away from the desk and say, it'd be so much better if we could do this, or I've got this thing that would work and it would do that. And I listen to those people and I say, we've all been doing this for a really long time. Some of us a really, really long time. And 911, 999 emergencies have been around for even longer. If there were any more good ideas to have, somebody would have already had them by now. But that's not to say that your idea is a bad one. So if you've got an idea, talk about it. If you can bring some new experience from your personal life or your hobbies, and it would work well in the emergency services, then think about it and talk about it. And if it's something that you want to, you've got the time to be able to put together, then definitely do it, because that is where the good ideas of the future will come from. Because we couldn't do that in the past with the developments of technology, things like iPhones and the access to tech that we've got now. It's opened a whole new realm of possibilities that, as emergency services, we should be looking to exploit and make available to our staff and the public, in a relevant and safe and secure way.
Awesome. Well, where do people find you? How do they find out more about emergency locate? Where should they go?
Okay, so I'm on LinkedIn an awful lot. So I'm just my full name, Nick Sutton, Emergency Locate, or you can get us on Facebook and Twitter at Emergency Locate. And the website is emergencylocate.co.uk.
Awesome. And I'll include all that information in the link as well, so you guys don't have to rush to write it down. And I'm definitely a toolbox equipper. That's one of my things that I like to say as well. So with that, and just to sum it all up, what is something that you could say to current or aspiring dispatchers um, that you think would be useful to add to their tool belt, that you wish someone told you early in your career, or something that you'll find that they would find helpful?
Oof, okay, that's a tough one. Um, so I think that the thing I would say actually is it's probably not a tool, or something that would maybe help in the job that they're doing. But one thing that I see a lot in dispatch, in emergency control center environments, is people come into dispatch or call handling, and they might spend a bit of time there. And if they think it's not for them, then predominantly where those people go is, we say out on the road in the UK, so or over to ops. So like a medical dispatcher for the ambulance service will go and do their ambulance training so they can go out and be a clinician. And I think in dispatch, people tend to see that as the only route, and it's not. There's so much more that goes on in your agencies outside of dispatch that with the experience that you've got in dispatch, you can make a real difference, whether that's risk and resilience or training or management. And I wouldn't ever try and put anybody off going to do what they if they want to go and be a policeman because they've done police dispatch. Awesome, if that's what you're going to do. But I tend to see that I get a feeling that people think that dispatchers think that's the only thing that they can do, and that's not accurate. There's much more going on in your agency. So definitely look around and see what you can do as a dispatcher and how your experience can help change things, because change it wherever you work. Change is needed. We've got to keep changing because we've got to keep up. We've got to make sure we look after our staff, we give them the tools that they need to do their job, and we're as best as we can be for the people that need us.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Nick, for joining me today all the way from the UK. I really appreciate you jumping on with me.
No, thank you very much for having me. I've really enjoyed myself.
Awesome. I'll be right back with you, okay?
Okay, take care.
All right, everybody, that was another episode here on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, the Raspy Dispatcher, Nick Sutton, emergency locate, all the way from the UK. Such a great program and such an interesting chat. I really enjoyed it. If you're interested in hopping on Let's Talk Dispatch with me, send me a message, head to theraspydispatcher.com. I would love to talk to you about anything and everything dispatch related. Of course, subscribe to our YouTube channel, like us on Facebook, and of course, follow us on Instagram. Until next time, stay raspy, everybody.